Namaste. It's a joy to be here. Today's subject, as you know, is how devotees rise. And in order to discuss this subject, I thought we would start with what is a devotee. It's a word that's commonly used, but it's not one that all people necessarily understand the implications of being a devotee. It's very common for people to say such as, I am a devotee of the such and such philosophy of art, or the such and such philosophy of architecture. That means they're devoted. That means that they like that style, and they probably don't really want to hear about other styles. And they're committed to it. Oh, that's good. That's sort of what we understand in the word devotee. But to the devotee of God, it has a whole, really an omnipresent aspect to it. Can you turn that down just a little bit, please? You see, when people say I'm devoted, I'm devoted to my husband, I'm devoted to my wife, I'm devoted to my children, I'm devoted to my society, I'm devoted to my country. This is all good. It says that they've committed themselves to it. Okay? That's great. But the devotee is taking every life experience and connecting it to not their personal opinion, to their emotional reaction to life, to their preferences, but they're seeking a truth that is at the very basis of what life is. And when you have lived enough incarnations, you come to the point where you realize, Kriyanandaji often told this story over the years, which I've always enjoyed. So this, years ago in America, they had the draft. It means that they could call you up to go into the armed services, and you had to go. And so this man was drafted, and he was taken to the office to be processed. And while he went through the processing, he would go around picking up pieces of paper and saying, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. And the whole time he's there, every time he sees a piece of paper, he goes, oh, no, that's not it. Eventually, they kind of, this guy is a little, questionable. So they send him to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist sits and says, what's the real problem? The guy walks in, and this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. And eventually, the psychiatrist goes, get him out of here. So he signs the paper, hands it to the fellow, and they go, oh, this is it. The soul goes through these incarnations, and eventually we get to this isn't it. This isn't it. And we discover that there is something that is it. It's something that will free you from that which you don't want. You don't want to continue to suffer. You don't want to continue to live in this limited up and down, pleasure and pain circumstance. And there's a point at which you recognize that. There's a point at which you begin to seek, well, what is the solution to this? And then you at some point become touched by spirit. That moment in which you realize that whoever said that God exists, they were correct. Maybe their opinion about what God is and the story about religion, maybe that's not agreeable to you, or maybe it's true or not true, but there's a point at which a reality within our own being says, oh my goodness, God exists. this universal truth, this universal reality, this is true, and I have been touched by it. And just one touch of that reality is enough to completely change your life. And at that point, when you say, I have felt the touch, and I am giving myself to that touch, that's when you become a devotee. When you say, and as it says in the Gita, and Arjuna and Krishna are looking at the field of Kurukshetra, and Arjuna's complaining that he doesn't want to go to war. And he's got all of these thoughts, all of this tumultuousness that he's trying to communicate, and eventually he gets tired of talking and he's ready to listen. And he says, Krishna, teach me. I surrender myself to you. That's the devotee. The devotee is the one who has surrendered, not in giving up the will to live well, the will to know God more deeply, but giving up the little self. We follow the path of self-realization, the big self. We're trying to get rid of the little self, the ego. So the devotee is the one who said, I realize that I need to shift my awareness from the ego consciousness to spirit consciousness, which is my true reality. And when you've dedicated yourself to that, then you become a devotee. And if you create that inner connection strongly enough, God will give you a guru who will intensify and guide that process. So we have the devotee. Then we have rising. So when the word rise, devotee rise, many different thoughts came to my mind. But I eventually ended up with baking. So, the bread has to rise. The cake rises. And what does it take? What does it take to make the quality bread? It takes the ingredients and certain techniques. And this we have in the spiritual life. We have the ingredients of all of the things that we do in the spiritual life in order to improve ourselves. We have satsang, we have kirtan, and we have spiritual community, and we read books with wisdom. We listen to discourses on inspiring subjects that both instruct us and inspire us. All of these things that we do, they all add up together as being the process that you need to do in order to cook the bread and to cook our lives. I remember I was talking to Brahmachari Jamal some years ago, and I was trying to convince him to do something with me. But he was firmly entrenched over there in Pune, and he didn't want to be budged, so he finally said, Vijay, I'm not done cooking here. Well, you have to cook the bread. You have to cook the cake. You have to cook your consciousness. And that takes energy. That takes an intense energy. But that energy, when you cook a cake in the oven or the bread in the oven here in India, the electricity is not exactly reliable. So you might find that in the middle of the cooking, and this reading was talking about when you feel the cooking happening, don't turn the power off. Don't turn to other things. Keep cooking. Keep staying with that inspiration, that energy. So the first time I came to India in 1977 with Kriyanandaji, and we came in April, May came along, it came his birthday. So one of the ladies that was in our group wanted to bake a cake. So, but in those days, and we were just sort of traveling, we couldn't go out and buy a big fancy oven of some kind. They had these portable pan ovens. It was like a pan bottom with a lid, but it was electrical. You plug it in and it would bake stuff, I guess. So we got one of these, And she mixed up some, I don't know whether it was from scratch or from a mix. I don't know if they had imported mixes in those days, but she was a good cook. And so she made a chocolate cake. And of course, halfway through the baking, the power went out. And so if you've done baking, you know that when the power goes out, if it's not baked, then it starts to rise and it gets puffy. But if it doesn't get completely cooked during that puffy stage, then it falls. And so it did eventually get cooked, but there was this sort of dip in the middle. It was kind of an odd shape. And in the end, we all did enjoy it, but it was an example of that, the sensitivity during that baking process. If we want to rise, if we want to become fully cooked spiritually, we have to recognize that there's a very sensitive period of time. And that very sensitive period of time is from the time you realize that you're a devotee until you're free. Now, within that, in this lifetime, because otherwise you can come back again. If you don't make it, you're going to get another chance, so don't overstress. But nevertheless, realize that if you want to make it in this lifetime, then you have a limited amount of time. You've got to keep the energy high. And anything that we can do in order to keep the energy high is in our benefit. We've got to keep the electricity on. And this is one of the most powerful benefits of spiritual community. When we are in an environment, Master said, environment is stronger than will. So when we're in an environment that encourages us, that energizes us, that keeps us cooking, this is the most optimal situation to put ourselves in. Now, you might say, well, you know, but I've got to go to work. I've got kids. I've got all these responsibilities. I can't cook all the time, spiritually. But that's not correct. Because we, most of us, I think, grow up thinking that spirituality takes place in the temple. You have to go to the temple and you have to rely on other learned people in order for you to be spiritually successful. That's not correct. That can be beneficial. But the responsibility of each and every one of us is to recognize in every moment of life that there is a spiritual potential and participate in it. Where is God? Well, we say, well, the devotees rising. Why do we say rise? Why do devotees rise? Why don't they just cook? They have to rise too. Well, because we know that good things are up and bad things are down. You never say, oh, I'm so happy. And you never say, oh, this is the most terrible day of my life. Because positive energy is up. And where is the center of spiritual awareness in the body? The spiritual eye. It's up. And when we experience in meditation an inner connection, how do you get to enlightenment, to get to the spiritual eye? Master said that the spine is the highway to the infinite. So we have to go into the spine and up to the spiritual eye. This is the real time. Everything that we do outwardly is so that we can connect in here and go in and up and out. And in the beginning, well, we close our eyes and we pray to God, but where is God? Is God in clouds? No. Is God in the astral realm? No. God is everywhere. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. That's not complicated. So we have to go in, and all of the techniques that we practice teach us to go to in and up. And this inner energy flowing up the spine is the rising. This is what we're trying to get to. This through stillness, and then up and out the spiritual eye. This is the rising. And the more time we spend in and up in a very dynamic way, then the more cooking takes place on a deeper and deeper level. So, of course, meditation and the practice of Kriya Yoga, these are essential tools to the person who wants to get cooked in this lifetime. You can get warmed up, no problem. Read good books, go to a discourse once a month. You know, anything that you do that's even remotely connected to upliftment will keep you warm to some degree. But if you really want to cook, you've got to get to stillness. You've got to become aware of this inner flow of energy. It was my good fortune recently we just returned from a seclusion in Abbot Mount, and with 7 of the monks. And it was, well, the trip there, it was 6 or 7 hours on the train. That wasn't too bad. But then it was 6 hours in a car on a road that's like a ride at an amusement park. That makes you go, It was unbelievably windy. And as you know how people drive here in India, and the driver, it was, and on roads that are only made for one car in one direction. So, and then when the big trucks come down, it's like, and of course there's the thrill of survival every time you don't crash. But it's how long can you handle that? So we got up there, and we arrived and it was almost dark. It wasn't quite dark, and I've been sitting in the front seat of the car like this for 6 hours, and I got out, and now the altitude is quite high, and so then there's this path and these stairs. I don't know, like 50 or 60 stairs going up. And it was just like, once I started up the stairs, you know, I got about halfway up, and I had to stop. I had to admit it, that I had to stop and recuperate. And I did. Somebody offered to take my bag. I said, no, I'm going to do it myself. So I made it up there, and the thing is that if we just want to cook a little, if we just want to warm ourselves, then we take the easy path. That's we can just do the things that you can do. Whatever you can do easily, that you do. And that will warm you. And it can get you through this life with a level of peace that other people don't have. But if you want to cook, then you have to be willing to climb the stairs, even if you have to stop and breathe hard for a while, and then keep going. And then we got up there. It's a beautiful property, and I did not realize that these guys were going to be so ambitious. And they set a schedule, so only a group retreat that I've been to that set a schedule like this. We were in seclusion for 9 days. The schedule was 3 hours of meditation in the morning, then 3-hour break, then 2-hour meditation, 4-hour break, 3 hours of meditation. So that's 8 hours of meditation per day. And, you know, we do that at Christmas time, no problem. But to do it day after day after day is really a challenge. And I was sitting in the back, so I could occasionally see what other people were up to. Because I remember, you know, when I came to Ananda, I was a Kriya monk, but I was not, you know, strong. And I guess I was there for maybe 4 or 5 months. And I was invited to come to a midweek meditation at one of the homes up at the old retreat. And there was 4 of us there. And what we usually did if we had a 3-hour meditation, there was chanting, meditation, chanting, meditation. So the chanting in the middle would break it up a little, because actually, you know, an hour to an hour and a half of meditation was like, I could do 30 minutes, okay? I was good with that. 45 minutes was, you know, but an hour or more was like, forget it, this is not happening. And so, but I figured, you know, I'll just hang in there until the break. But nobody told me that this little private group, they did things a little differently. Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. One chant, and that's it. So it was like, and nobody had told me. So about halfway through, I didn't have a watch, but I'm thinking, must be an hour and a half now. Must be, I kept thinking, it's got to be an hour, but it kept going on and on. So, you know, you just look at the wall. The walls were very interesting. They had this pine wood with these little knots in them. They were all very, you know, entertaining. But the thing is, you look at the people next to you, and I mean, I look and they were, and you know, I was like, it's humbling. I mean, it's like, you just feel like, oh, this is terrible. I'm so bad at this. But then you the young American male energy is, if they can do it, I can do it. And then you start to, you know, create a determination to go farther than you've gone before. And after some time, you realize that you can do things that you never thought that you would be able to do. And spiritually speaking, this is the key. If you want to meditate deeply, you've got to learn to get to stillness. Be still and know that I am God. Master said that silence is the altar of spirit. Of spirit. And in the seclusion, we kept silence for the whole time. And but the silence that Master was talking about, it wasn't just the silence of the voice, but it's the calming of the mind, the consciousness, and going deep, deep into that universal well of stillness. So you have to still the heart. We still the breath in Hong Kong. We get calmer and calmer breath. And in the heart, you've got to get to that stage where you can be completely still. And then you take that heart expansive openness, that surrender, that loving surrender, and you pass it through the cervical center, which is a center of calmness, deep calmness, still even more. And then with that flow of awareness towards the spiritual eye. So in the heart you go, ah. In the cervical center you go, ah. In the spiritual eye you go, oh my. This is what happens, is you begin to feel this reality that we believe it's there, we hope it's there, but then you begin to experience that it's there on deeper and deeper levels. And in that experience, once you've experienced it, when you become a devotee, you know that you can turn away anytime, but you're never going to forget that it's the truth of that experience. And the deeper you go into meditation, you will never forget that deep one. And the more you go there, the easier it is to get there again. And the more we build on our experience through the years, these guys are in, I think, 4 to 6 year range in terms of how long they've been meditating. So this is something to challenge ourselves with, to realize that if we want to really cook, if we want to rise completely, if we want to make the perfect loaf of bread, then to really rise our souls, this is how we do it. And the stillness that we achieve in meditation, we have to maintain that stillness in spite of the trip back, which was absolutely. But I had a strategy. I had a strategy for the trip back. And that was that I invited the guys in the car to speak about meaningful things. And we had long conversations about meaningful things. And I found that when I was engaged in that meaningful conversation, I was distracted from the stuff that was really, too much. And this is the thing when you find yourself in any kind of challenging situation, well, all the time basically, cling to those things, cling to that stillness, cling to those things that are representative of your spiritual life. Now there's one final ingredient that we have to keep in mind, and that is when you make bread, you use yeast. The yeast causes the dough to rise. The yeast in the spiritual life is the guru. It's the guru's influence that really energizes and allows. I mean, you can make unleavened bread. You don't have to use it. You can stay warm without the guru. But if you want to cook, you've got to connect to the guru on ever deeper levels more and more of the time. To the point where just when we energize, you send energy to the forearm, act of will. Learn to send energy to the spiritual eye, act of will. But you're not sending tension, you're sending connectedness. And when you connect here, then learn to connect instantly. We do this all the time. We look at the pictures of the masters, but we're not looking at it to a picture. We're looking to attune ourselves. In meditation, visualize the face of the master and then attune to their energy vibration, attune to their presence. Remember, Master said, "To those who think me near, I will be near." In that instant, what you're really, because the Master's always present, what you're saying is, oh yeah, I remember now, let me open my heart, my mind, my consciousness to that presence, more consciously. And as a devotee, when the Guru accepts you as a disciple, the Guru is always present. But we're not present. We're not aware of that presence. We have to practice awareness of that presence. And when we do that, we will experience that and learn to experience. Yes, it's easier to experience in meditation, but once you've gone there, it's easier to go back again. And it's easier to perceive it. I remember Swamiji saying one time he was in seclusion many years ago, and he said every time I start to hear Om with ears open, something happens out there. Somebody starts making noise. And I was thinking, wasn't it nice he can hear Om at all, to say nothing of with open ears? And that's the thing, is that if we learn to perceive these things, then over time we become less and less affected by how life goes on the outside. In the beginning, yes, we're affected by it, but more and more we can become unaffected by those things that are taking place, like when Swamiji would have his teeth filled without any anesthesia. he learned how to disconnect from that uncomfortable experience and to be away from it internally. The more we experience of God's presence inside, the stronger it becomes, and that becomes the thing that protects us. And then when the cake is cooked, when the bread is really cooked, you can smack it on the top. It doesn't sink. It stays up. And that's where we need to get. When the devotee's risen, then you can smack it, but it stays up. And then ultimately, death and the destruction of the bread makes no difference to the devotee, because the heart has merged into the divine, and then we are fully risen. Namaste.